Supplied with the teachings of his master Socrates, Plato makes a magnificent attempt to grasp the essence of things, to give knowledge an objective anchorage based on the capacity of the human intellect, thus overcoming the relativism and subjectivism of the sophists and the world of the senses they still clung to. In one of his most significant dialogues, Phaedo, in order to describe the great passage that took him from the physical to the metaphysical world, Plato uses the metaphor of the second navigation, when the winds-dropped sailors in ancient times rolled up the sails and began to row. This was the second navigation. Through this metaphor, Plato wanted to say that after having followed the empirical path with the senses, one must resort to another means, to another faculty. One must resort to the intellect, and this will put one into contact with ideas. What does this Platonic doctrine of ideas consist of?
In Phaedo,
Plato introduces ideas mainly out of a need that we today would call epistemological, that is, to justify the existence of science. He is thinking in particular of mathematics, more specifically still of geometry, and he notes how mathematics makes use of concepts, for example, the concept of equal, which have no equivalent in empirical reality.
We in the
world of experience that we live in never meet two perfectly equal things. Yet mathematics uses the concept of equal, and it is science. This means, according to Plato, that in a world separate from the empirical world, something must exist that constitutes the object of this knowledge, this science. This object he names idea, using a term already in widespread use in the Greek language, but generally served to mean the visible aspect of something. In Plato, it assumed the meaning of the conceivable, the thinkable, the intelligible aspect of reality. In Parmenides, the doctrine emerges for similar reasons. That is, to explain how one single thing, one empirical subject, can partake of several different features. That is, that it can be internally multiple, and the notion of idea serves to explain this simultaneous presence of different features in the same entity.
Questa compresenza di aspetti diversi in una medesima realtà. Anche questo
This too, I would say, is an epistemological necessity. It should not be forgotten, however, that especially in the early dialogues, Plato also makes the notion of ideas spring forth from needs of an ethical nature. I am thinking above all of Euthyphro and of the other so-called Socratic dialogues, in which he searches for the definition of a virtue and speaks of, introduces, the term idea precisely as the criterion through which one can recognize which actions are virtuous and which are not. This criterion becomes a type of model. Plato says indeed that the idea is that through which, by our looking to it as a model, we are able to recognize which actions are virtuous and which are not, which actions are just, which actions are beautiful, and so forth.
Platons Idee ist eine Antwort.
Plato's idea is an answer to various questions. Indeed, one speaks of the economy of the theory of ideas. That is, it's a theory which can, with few means or resources, efficiently handle a great deal. Some, however, ridicule the supposed economy of the theory of ideas, claiming that it inappropriately uses a single inadequate means to handle many different questions that really should be kept separate. A very important aspect of the idea is the epistemological one, the logical one. The idea is the one which gives unity to what appears diverse and separate. By being part of the single idea, the multifarious things that are perceivable are what they are. At the same time, however, the idea is a complete, perfect model of that which it represents. And thanks to its perfection and immutability, it differs from the perceivable or sensible things which participate in it. In the area of ethics, too, ideas are also directly norms. For Plato, the idea of justice is itself just. That's something that has caused an additional logical problem and has kept research busy over the years. Ideas are, in a certain sense, the cause of things. It's difficult, however, to say in what sense.
Es ist sehr schwer zu sagen, in welchem Sinne.
I believe that to satisfy primarily those scientific epistemological needs which determined the emergence of this doctrine, the idea must be conceived as a reality which transcends the world of experience, that is, separate from it. This is because the characteristics of the idea, that is, universality, immutability and eternity, do not match those of empirical reality, which for Plato, on the other hand, are constituted indeed by continual flux, continual change. We need, however, to be careful not to misunderstand this transcendence, as has sometimes happened, starting with Aristotle. Aristotle, while underlining with great decisiveness the transcendence of ideas, sometimes tends to make them almost entities which are separate from those which are sensible. He himself uses the term eternal sensibles. Now, this is certainly not the same meaning as Plato's sense of the transcendence of ideas, because there the idea is not an individual reality. It is not an experienceable or sensible reality, and cannot thus be as a simple reproduction at the intelligible level of what exists in the world of experience.
Le interpretazioni moderne